Alright, our last installment for Chapter 4 is War Comes to America. This is about the French and Indian War, and what you need to understand between them is that the French and the British are, for centuries, they have been rivals. They have been fighting each other on and off for hundreds of years, and now they have a situation where the French and the English are right next to each other as far as having colonies. So here are the French in blue, and the British are in kind of pinkish orange. This is also British, this purple area, but this is French around the Mississippi and the St. Lawrence River. The French had several advantages. First, they were allied to the Algonquin, which were a very large amount of Indians as well as other tribes, and they were very good. Remember, they're known as the traders. So they traded for things like furs with the American Indians, and so they wanted to keep the Indians safe. Um, this was something that was going to make them rich, the trading exchange that they had set up with the Indians. So they were very friendly with the Indians and had a good arrangement with them. Uh, Furs were very important because it kept people warm during these times. Homes were poorly insulated, so they would get very cold, and so capes, cloaks, things of that nature were important to people back then. And of course, hats were made from beaver skin. The Ohio River also had rich soil for farming, so it's very valuable in that way. And it also had the Ohio River, which was a deep, wide, and easy to travel along river. Remember, they needed to use rivers to move around. So the Ohio River is right about here, and it went into the Mississippi, and it can go into the Gulf of Mexico, out to the Atlantic, and anywhere in the world. So that was really a big deal. So to protect this area, they used forts, and they set up forts all along uh, the eastern part of the Ohio Valley to make sure the British couldn't get in. Well, the British didn't like that, and they knew that the Ohio Valley was great places to settle. Um, because of this great land, the colonists in the eastern coast wanted to move into this land because it was so good for catching furs, catching beavers, and also farming. And the British wanted to take that away from the French. If the French could get rich off this land, then they can buy more military equipment and then challenge the British and maybe take over some of their colonies. So that was not something they wanted to let happen. Washington uh, was a colonel during this time. He was 21 years old, and he was ordered to go after Fort Duquesne. He realized he didn't have enough men, so he set up a Fort Necessity, and the French came after him and captured him. They then forced him to go back to Virginia to tell them that the Ohio Territory is French territory. So that was not a good beginning for George Washington. Uh, Also, what you should remember is that the British and the Iroquois fought on one side, and the French and the Algonquin fought on the other side. So it was, when we talk about the French and Indian War, uh, remember, we were on the British side, so we fought against the French and the Algonquin Indians, so they just named it the French and Indian War. Of course, people call it from different countries, and even in Britain they call it a different type of war, but here in America we call it the French and Indian War. It lasted about 10 years, and Britain had won. And the reason why they won is that they sent more troops in. This was made easy because, well, it made it hard for the French because all their area they controlled inland, and their only outlet was the St. Lawrence River. So once the British took over Quebec and Montreal, then nothing can get in, and they eventually started running out of supplies. They couldn't get reinforcements in properly, and the British won the French and Indian War. In doing so, the they took over all of Canada, and anything east of the Mississippi all went to the British. So that's a huge amount of land and a very valuable land too. So the British were very happy about being able to win this war. However, because they sent in so many troops, they spent a lot of money trying to win that war. And when they were basically almost broke, they decided, well, it's fair since we fought this war for, the American colonies, they should start paying for it. And so they started levying taxes. And because there was no representation for Americans in Parliament, they started the taxation without representation. George Washington also learned important lessons. He learned how to fight better in America from the French and Indian allies. They did not line up in lines like very strong European armies. Instead, they used the terrain. They hid behind trees and rocks, and then they would dodge the bullets by doing that, and then they would shoot back, and it was very, very effective. So he would remember this for the next war, which would happen about 20 years later, or actually 15 years later. And that's it. That's it for our chapter. Thanks for watching.